everyone. I wanted to take a quick pause before we dive into today's episode. Just a quick heads up. After this episode, I am going to be on a break for a few months. Got some things going on in my personal life, including going back to school. So I will be taking a few months hiatus. This isn't permanent. I'll probably be recording some episodes in the coming months. Thank you so much for listening and supporting. And if you haven't already, there are about 50 some episodes to date. And it would be so appreciated if you go back in the archives and listen to some of our previous episode about whether or not to be child-free by choice, my life journey, many good episodes in the docket. So I would appreciate your support by listening to those episodes. Today, I'm joined by Sabrina Trobak, a registered clinical counselor, author, and public speaker based in Fort St. John, BC. Sabrina is the author of Not Good Enough, Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety, a book that dives deep into how the core beliefs that we carry, like not feeling good enough, not important, or not valued, can help shape our self-worth and daily lives. And with over 20 years of experience in education as a teacher, vice principal, and school counselor, and now is the founder of Trobak Holistic Counseling, Sabrina brings a wealth of knowledge and compassionate, approachable style to her work. She's passionate about helping people identify and transform those limiting beliefs into self-worth and significance. And in this conversation, we're going to be exploring how those core beliefs form, the connection between trauma and anxiety, and most importantly, practical tools that you can use to shift your mindset and begin embracing your worth. She's known for weaving humor and real-life examples into her insights, so I know this is going to be a powerful and relatable conversation. Let's dive in. Can you please share a little bit about your journey from teaching and finding your own practice with holistic counseling?
Sure. So I was a teacher for about 20 years, mainly as a learning assistant teacher, but also worked in a lot of other areas as well, taught everything from kindergarten prep right up to grade 11 sciences. Towards the end of my teaching career, I was a school counselor and I went to a workshop. And at the end of the 3-day workshop, I thought, this is what I need to do. The workshop was looking at things through the perspective of our core belief, feeling not good enough, not important, not valued. So I talked with the speaker and he agreed to teach me his model of therapy. And so I quit my teaching practice and started my own counseling agency. And that was back in 2010. And within about 6 months of being up and running as a counselor there, using that idea of really sorting through our core belief, I had a waiting list. I've had a waiting list ever since. I hate having to turn people away. So I decided to write a book called Not Good Enough, Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety, as a way to provide resources for people who can't access counseling for whatever reason.
It's amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. How would you say that all of your years within education have really kind of helped shape the way you approach counseling and public speaking?
Well, I taught junior high for many, many, many years. So you got to entertain those guys or they lose focus really quick. So you get good at using body language and facial expressions and incorporating humor and just making things more interesting to try to keep them engaged. So they definitely were a very significant part in that piece of learning for sure. As a learning assistant teacher, I often worked with small groups or even one-on-one. That transforming into counseling where you really are seeing people more one-on-one was a really nice fit. I like being able to work with individuals where you really can help them see and sort through things for them personally and make a real difference for them and helping them kind of challenge their thinking of things for sure.
I love that. And it makes a lot of sense because at that age, the attention span is definitely very limited. And for our listeners who may not be familiar, can you explain maybe what core beliefs are and how they might develop?
Sure. So, I think there's more and more talk about core beliefs and what they mean. For the model of therapy that I practice, the core belief is kind of broken down into 3 areas: feeling not good enough, not important, not valued, or the other end of it, which is the healthy core belief, feeling good enough, important, and valued. Nobody's 100% one or the other, but what we generally find is people who are struggling, who have higher anxiety, depression, feel lonely, struggle with a sense of belonging, feel kind of discontent with their life, often that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, is more significant. We're constantly trying to prove to ourselves that what we believe about ourselves is true. So if my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, I'm going to be drawn to people, places, experiences, even my own perceptions are going to reinforce and support that core belief. So we end up getting drawn to things that create even more problems because we need to support that core belief.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, that really just kind of defines like my early childhood relationships to a T, especially when I was younger and really like people pleasing and really had very low self esteem and very limited core beliefs about myself in the sense that I just didn't believe that I like was good enough, like as we were just talking about. And how would you say that not being good enough can manifest in our everyday lives and relationships?
So, one of the key things that we talk a lot about in society is anxiety. Anxiety is actually a symptom of that core belief. A lot of people think of anxiety being, about the trigger, right? I have anxiety of public speaking. Anxiety is about your belief in yourself that you can handle it. So if you believe you can handle public speaking, you're not going to have anxiety. If you believe you can't handle public speaking, you're going to have more anxiety. So anxiety isn't about the trigger. It's about your belief in yourself to handle the trigger. If your core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, you're generally going to have more self-doubt, more insecurity. You're going to likely have more anxiety for sure. So we see it coming out in those areas that are various symptoms of anxiety, like negative thoughts, racing thoughts, catastrophizing, always needing to be busy. We see it in just not feeling happy and content with your life in general. And we can also see it in more of the poor choices and behaviors that we often choose, like drugs, alcohol, pornography, gambling, lying, cheating, spending money that you don't necessarily have. All those things, all those coping strategies are used to give us a bit of a break so we don't have to deal with what's really going on right now. But then after we're done them, they also end up reinforcing and supporting that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. So that's why we need to focus past the behavior and really look at what's feeding or driving that behavior in the first place. If we're not really looking and challenging at that core belief level, the chances of long-term change become significantly more challenging.
That makes so much sense. And it's like, it sounds like we really have to identify like the root of that cause. For example, public speaking. I know me myself, despite doing podcasts, like it is still a challenge for me in public settings, public speaking. But if we really think about why am I nervous about this or why am I anxious about this thing? And like if we really unpack that, we find that, okay, it's not necessarily like the public speaking itself. And it sounds like from what you're mentioning that it's that inherent belief that, we're not good enough. And so translating into, okay, well, I'm not good enough. So I'm bad at this, or I'm not going to give a very good presentation. And I know for me, like I definitely had a lot of that present when I was younger. For example, I was really anxious about learning to drive when I was a teenager, early 20s. And I, for the longest point in time, like had myself convinced I can't do this. Like I really had this a core belief that, oh, well, I don't know. I don't want to say like I felt like inept, but I'm like, I don't think I'm capable. Like I had these thoughts in my mind. And then like later on, some years later, I find out, okay, well, that's definitely not the case and all of that. But like, I feel like we have these learned beliefs and I felt this way for like a long time. Like I literally thought I'm not capable of doing this when I know like now, okay, that's obviously not true. But can you tell us a little bit about some of these life stages, like maybe childhood, adolescence, adulthood? Are any of these stages more critical than the other in kind of forming these beliefs?
It often starts when you're really, really young, and then it just compounds over and over and over the years, right? So if I have 30 years of believing I'm not good enough, that's a lot different than starting to not believe that when I'm 25 and now I'm 30. right? So generally, we do see these behaviors starting earlier. If as a child, I'm brought up feeling good enough, important, and valued, then even when I'm 25 and something bad happens, I'm not taking it personally. I feel more empowered in how I can handle it. It's not going to shift and change that core belief instantly. So starting that core belief, either one at a really young age, is really, really vital to how you're going to end up handling things moving on in society. And just to your point that you're saying about didn't feel capable of driving, anxiety is not about our actual ability. It's about our belief in ourselves to handle it, right? And so many times those kind of things happen where we go into a public speaking event, let's say, have really high anxiety. I'm worrying about all these things. What if I stumble my words? What if people walk out? What if, what if, what if, what if? And then I go through and do it. And after I go, well, that wasn't that bad,
Right.
right? Anxiety isn't about your actual skill. It's about your belief in yourself to handle it. So we often feel more anxiety before the event than we do when the event is actually happening. Because when the event is happening, we've got the skills, we're figuring it out, we're sorting through it. It's that self-doubt piece that can be crippling when it's happening beforehand.
Absolutely. And I'll share an example. I'm actually in my master's program, and last week in one of our classes, we had like a 5-minute presentation individually. And I just like was so anxious about it. But to your point, like when it was done, I'm like, oh, that wasn't really that bad. And I think part of me knew like, okay, I know it's like not going to be that bad. And just like, I think it helps like seeing, I think I was probably like number 15. There were like 30 people that presented, and kind of seeing like everyone else present, and no one presentation was like absolutely perfect. And just kind of like seeing that was kind of like reaffirming too, like we all are on a different levels of public speaking skills. And it was just kind of refreshing to see like at the beginning of this class that we're all on our different paths in a sense. Can you share some practical tools or maybe some exercises that people can use to kind of challenge or reframe these limiting beliefs?
So, I think when we've got a lot of that self-doubt and that core belief not good enough is really kicked into high gear, when we have high anxiety, one of the things that can be really, really effective is actually just stopping and taking a few deep breaths. The more your anxiety is building, the faster your brain is going, the more likely you are going to not be able to use logic and reason, understand consequences, sequence events, connect to emotions, memory. High levels of cortisol, you can't do any of those things. The more anxiety you have, the more cortisol you have. Taking a few deep breaths actually drops that cortisol level and helps you be able to think a bit more settled. So that's a really big strategy. What I say to my clients too, though, is don't wait until your anxiety is really, really, really high to breathe. Start incorporating taking a few deep breaths throughout your day. So every time you have a drink of your coffee or a drink of water, take a deep breath. Every time you look at your phone, take a deep breath. Every time you log into your computer, take a deep breath. These kind of things where you're incorporating it into something you do can help bring your anxiety down. So at the end of the day, you don't feel nearly as stressed out. So now when something bigger happens, you're already at a lower level. You're going to feel like you can manage it. Now, if something big happens, definitely breathe, but try to incorporate breathing more throughout. The other significant strategy that we talk about is make a plan. Remember, anxiety is a lack of confidence. So one of the ways I can improve my confidence is make a plan of how I would handle the situation. So for example, I'm public speaking. I have to give a presentation at school. So I'm going to make a plan. What am I going to do? I'm going to, write really good notes so I know very clearly what to say. I'm going to have a PowerPoint, which helps me kind of stay guided and connected to what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to practice 10 times the week before. I'm going to get a good sleep the night before. I'm going to get up and have one last practice before I go about my day. I'm not going to drink coffee that morning because that can make me jittery and make me talk faster. So I'm not going to, right? You just go through and make a plan of what you want it to look like. The other thing you can do is then take that plan and really go to kind of worst case scenario. So worst case scenario, I totally bomb. I get up there. I go totally blank. I can't remember anything. The computer doesn't log in. There's nothing even there for me to refer to. So now I'm going to make a plan for that. So what do I do if that happens? Maybe I go to the prof after and say, hey, my computer wasn't working. I froze. can I do something to make those points up? Can I, try to present again? Can I do it the next day? I might feel embarrassed, shame, whatever it is. But bottom line, I'd handle it. I often end up worrying about all these things, worrying about worst case scenario, when bottom line, even if that worst case scenario happened, you would handle it. Even if worst case scenario was you end up bombing the presentation and you fail the course, you would still handle it. Cost you more money to do it again or get an extension, or maybe you just say, forget it, I don't need it.
Right.
But you would still move on. So we get all caught up in our head with these what ifs that if we really stopped and thought about, what if that really did happen? What would I do? What would be my plan? We'd handle it. We're way more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And so once we can kind of get out of our own head, stop creating our own anxiety because of our thoughts, we're going to feel much more content in our lives. As we're doing that, we're also building and developing that core belief, good enough, important, and valued. I'm feeling like I can handle it. I can handle it. I can handle it. That builds and develops that core belief, good enough, important, and valued.
Ah, that's so amazing and beautifully said, to be honest, because it's like, I think once we like really dial it down, and I actually remember having a similar conversation with someone, not necessarily just a presentation, worrying about something coming up and like presenting like the what if. Okay, what if this happens? Okay, I would do this. Or what if that happens? Okay, I would do this. And so like as you were mentioning, the moment like we're feeling all this anxiety, but like once we get past whatever it is, whatever event, whatever it is that we're afraid of, so many months down the road, we're like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know why I was so anxious about that. Like, here I am now, like it's all said and done. As you were mentioning, yeah, like the worst case scenario is like maybe you fail the class. And then, you cross that bridge when you come to it. Right. And I think there's so many like little things we're caught up in and that we don't realize that 1 year from today, okay, we're going to look back and be like, why was I so nervous or anxious about that?
Yeah.
And it's just like that time passes.
And that's exactly what what anxiety does is it thrives in those what ifs. And so we often just let those what ifs spin and spin and spin and spin and spin, where we need to actually get a pen and paper, write it down, because when we write it down, it feels more real. Our brain is more likely to believe it. Write down what that anxious thought is or that what if thought is, and then figure out, okay, so if this actually happens, what do I do? So now your brain probably isn't even going to think about the what if anymore because it knows how to answer it. So then it comes up with another what if. You do the same thing. You write it down. You figure out, if this happens, what do I do? You're building confidence that you can handle all those scenarios. After you do this for a while, those what if thoughts just start to lessen and maybe even stop because your brain goes, oh yeah, I know how to handle it. And so it stops that spinning. But most of us don't do that. We just get stuck in that what if, what if, what if, what if, and then it exasperates and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're an anxious mess. But it's because we're creating it ourselves in our own head.
So true. And I'm actually going through something similar in my personal life right now and kind of brought on that heavy anxiety. And I found for me personally that another thing that's really helped, and like I have to stop throughout the day, as you're mentioning, to really kind of breathe in order to kind of release this tension buildup. And another thing that's really like helped me is not necessarily just like role playing, but even using ChatGPT, for example, through this situation. And for example, it could be something you're worried about, like how do I handle XYZ situation if this person says this or they do that? And it's really helpful. It'll provide, one-liner prompts. So that way you can tackle this situation like with confidence if you're so worried about like what that other person's going to do, what they're going to say. And it's been really helpful like for me. So that way there's like an action plan, like for every little like worry that you have, put it in there. And that way you can like plan ahead of time. And it kind of gives you that some control back. And it's been really empowering in a way, something that's really helped me. But going back to those beliefs where we're not good enough, and maybe someone who's just starting to recognize that they have this belief, is there maybe a first step that they might be able to take?
Yeah, I think the first step really is awareness. You have to be aware of how much your brain is going to that not good enough, not important, not valued. How much are you beating yourself up? What are the symptoms that this looks like? And in my book, we talk a lot about symptoms of anxiety and what these kind of thought patterns can look like so you can better identify them and then figure out for yourself what your core belief looks like and how you are feeding it within yourself. Because, I think it's kind of like a funnel. Everything kind of comes down to that core belief, but what it looks like for you can be very different from what it looks like for, everyone else in your life. And so it's really important to figure out your own piece. And the more you gain that understanding, the more you start to become of what it looks like, you're already actually shifting that core belief to good enough, important, and valued, because you're proving to yourself that you can handle stopping and looking at these things and recognizing that, oh, there's that core belief again, not good enough. Okay, I don't need that. I'm going to challenge that thought and kind of challenge yourself out of it by reframing and thinking of it in a different way. All those little pieces build the core belief good enough, important, and valued. But if you're not aware, you're not going to do anything different. You don't even know you're supposed to do anything different.
Absolutely. And kind of thinking about someone who's really struggling with these core beliefs, how would you say someone might be able to start communicating their needs and self-worth within a relationship without feeling selfish or guilty?
I think part of what you have to do is you've got to first focus on you. Looking externally to build your core belief is not going to be helpful, but it is a very common thing for people to do. If my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, I don't believe in myself that I can handle making decisions, figuring this out. So I need that external person to validate me, to help me figure it out, to listen to me, and all those kind of things. When the truth of the matter is, you have no control over that. The only one you can control is you. So the more you focus on what you're wanting to do, how you're going to want to handle situations, the more you're building that confidence within yourself. Once you've got that, then it's going to be easier to voice those opinions to your partner and kind of let them know where you're at. But to try to do that when you haven't focused on you likely turns into two ways. One, you just fold and you don't say anything. Or two, it turns into more aggressive, where there's kind of a barking tone to it, which also often ends up feeling unheard. The only one that you can control is you. And so the more you focus and work on yourself, the better it is. Spending time focusing on what your partner should be doing different is all a distraction from you focusing on what you should be doing differently. As you get healthier and sort it out, it's fair to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I want to be in a relationship where I feel heard. If you're not willing to do that, then we've got an issue. But I'm not telling him to change. I'm not telling him what he needs to do. I'm telling him this is what I'm looking for. If you're willing, great. But if not, then we're going to have some problems here moving forward. We may have to kind of move on to a different relationship. And this is a everyone thing. The more time you spend trying to focus on getting someone else to change, the less time you're focusing on you. And you're going to end up feeling very frustrated in the end run of it, for sure.
And that's such a really important reminder. And I think this can extend to like any sort of relationship that you might be in, whether it's a partner, family member, or a friend. And you're mentioning like we can only, control ourselves and ask for what we're needing. And that other person may not be able to or may not want to give that. And then we might be in a situation to where, like, as you're mentioning, we might need to make a decision. And that can be challenging. Are there any patterns that you often see in people who struggle with feelings of being unvalued or insignificant?
Oh, yeah, they're always drawn to people who reinforce and support that. So if I'm in relationship after relationship after relationship and my partner never really listens to me, is kind of gone all the time, chooses work and friends over me, what I need to do is figure out, why am I drawn to this person? Oh, because it reinforces and supports my core belief that I'm not important and I don't have value, that I'm not good enough. So I need to work on and challenge that, because even if I say, you're not listening to me, you're not respecting me, you're choosing me over someone else, and I break up with them, guess who the next partner I'm going to be attracted to? Someone who also reinforces that core belief. We're constantly trying to prove to ourselves that what we believe about ourselves is true. This is in our partners. So if I feel not good enough, not important, not valued, I'm not going to be drawn to the guy that is feeling good enough, important, and valued. I'm going to find them boring, clingy. I don't want to have anything to do with them. They're not giving me what I need. I need to feel not good enough, not important, not valued. Now, these aren't conscious thoughts that we go through, but unconsciously our brain's going, oh, I don't know how to deal with that guy. Let's find someone who knows how to reinforce and support that we're not good enough, not important, not valued. You find that guy, feels more calm. It's predictable. You know what it looks like. It's your normal. Unconscious, we're not aware we're doing it, but we end up repeating those patterns over and over and over again. I often hear clients say that I just want to be normal. And I always say, no, you don't. Normal's not necessarily healthy. Normal is simply what you are used to, what you grew up with, what's familiar for you. That's your normal. And for very many, many, many people, that's not very healthy.
100%. And when we're taking those proactive steps to become more self-aware and have stronger core beliefs about ourselves that we're capable and we're worthy, and after being in such a long history, whether it's relationship or like family dynamics of limiting self beliefs and people pleasing, and you're finally advocating for yourself. And a lot of times there's a lot of pushback. Like those people aren't used to like, this new you, right? And how might one like go about handling some of those situations where maybe our loved ones aren't reacting in kind to it?
Yeah, it's a big issue. If one person is in counseling and the other one is not, it creates some pretty significant disconnect. And so one of the things I always talk to my partners or my clients about if they have a partner is that if one of you is in counseling and one's not, you think it's hard now, it's going to get worse. Because if you get healthier, you sort through things and your partner does not, now he isn't meeting your needs anymore and you're not meeting his. So it causes even more conflict. So people need to be aware of that. Once you're aware of it, really, again, it's about you taking care of you. Clients often say, how do I have a healthy relationship? Well, what is an actual relationship? It's not a tangible thing. It's a result of the individuals. So if I have two healthy individuals, I'm going to have a healthy relationship. If I have one healthy individual, one unhealthy individual, that relationship is going to struggle and likely won't last long because they're not meeting each other's needs. But if I have two unhealthy people, I'm going to have an unhealthy relationship. So rather than focusing on the relationship where you don't have to take as much responsibility because the relationship isn't you, it's some entity out in space, it's easier to distract from. If I focus on me and make myself healthier, that's all I can do to create a healthy relationship. That's all my part of it. And then it's okay to, again, let them know where you're at. Let them know what's going on. This isn't working for me anymore. I need us to have more challenging conversations without fighting. When it turns to fighting, I'm going to remove myself. One of the best things you can do when things get heated is remove yourself from the situation. Done respectfully. It's not a, snap of the fingers, I'm out of here, I don't ever want to see you again. It's, hey, this is getting heated. I'm stopping now. I'm removing myself from the situation. And you leave. And if that means you have to go to the other room and lock the door, if it means you have to get in your vehicle and drive away, then that's what you do to avoid engaging in the conflict. Conflict is not going to do anything. It just damages the relationship. Not engaging gives you much more of a sense of empowerment in the situation for sure.
Oh, 100%. And my husband and I have definitely been in situations where we've had to do that. And I've been pretty lucky because I've been in therapy for a long time. And probably a few months or so ago, I had convinced my husband to start doing therapy too, because initially it wasn't that he was resistant. It was more like, he said, well, I'm not really sure what I would talk about. And fast forward some months, he's just like so glad that like he's doing it and working on himself and in that way. And I think one of the biggest things that he was telling me that has been beneficial for him is learning when to step away so that that heated conversation doesn't escalate, taking a break, taking a walk, taking a drive somewhere. It's so important. And in a relationship or with family, you have to, because he's actually had to do practice similar coping mechanisms when it's come to family too. Like sometimes we're interacting with other people and like that other person's kind of getting under our skin, and instead of continuing back and forth, knowing when to step away. And that's been beneficial for me too. And sometimes the other person doesn't always like it. Sometimes they really, really want to continue and continue, right? And not even necessarily with just him, but like with other relationships in my life too. I've found myself on the other end where that person, they really want to argue with me. They really want to
Mhm.
continue it, and they get mad when I'm starting to walk away. They get mad, and it takes a lot of self-control to really, okay, I need to remove myself. I need to continue walking no matter what they're saying, what they're throwing at my back. I got to remove myself.
Right. And, I think people can get pretty good at knowing what buttons to push too,
Yep.
right? So, I decide, okay, I'm going to start walking away. I walk away and my partner says, oh, fine, walk away. That's what you
Yep.
always, right? Engages me again. I turn around because I don't want them to think that. So it's being aware of when I talk about that, you need to walk away before it gets really heated. Try to leave when things are a bit more calm, increases the chances that it's going to go more successfully. But we talk about, what do you think they're going to say or do if you try to walk away? Well, they're going to try to engage me, try to pull
Yep.
me back. Well, so what does that look like? Fine, just walk away, right? Oh, this is what you always do. Oh, I'm not good enough for you to have a conversation. So we brainstorm those ideas so that then when they come up, the person goes, oh, yeah, this was one of the ones that's a button. No, I'm just going to continue to remove myself. But one of the other pieces we talk about is, you don't want to just all of a sudden remove yourself from a situation without explaining to your partner what's going on. So we talk about how couples, families should have a conversation where they sit down, at dinner or whatever, and they talk about, we want to do things differently in our family. We're having a fair amount of conflict and it's not going well. So we want to try to handle conflict differently. So what we are going to do is, one person in the family or more can at any point say a word. And when that word is said, everyone just stops and we take a break. So we're making a plan so everyone in the family is aware of what it is. So we talk about high levels of cortisol. When you have high levels of cortisol in your brain, you can't use logic and reason. You can't understand consequences. You can't sequence events. You can't connect to emotions. Your memory is impacted. So when we got high levels of cortisol, that's often when we dig in and try even harder to make them understand, but you're better off banging your head into a concrete wall. And so we talk about that with them and help them see that when things are starting to go that way, someone in the family needs to say a word. You guys decide on your family what that word is going to be. Then when anyone says that word, everyone just stops and takes a break. We all have a plan. We know what that word means. It's not just coming out from nowhere. It's planned and organized. The other thing we say is, anyone in the family can say the word. So if I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I can say the word. But if I'm not feeling overwhelmed, but I can see that someone else is starting to get heated, I can say the word as well. I don't have to explain why I'm saying the word. I'm just saying the word. So now everyone takes a break. Usually takes a minimum of 20 minutes for cortisol level to go back down. So we usually recommend a 20 or a half an hour, 20 to 30-minute break. Then you can come back and try to resolve the conflict and have more conversation. But again, as soon as that conversation turns into pointing fingers at the other person, it's going to go sideways again. So when we come back, we're looking at my part. What did I do to create this? What do I need to say? Focusing on my needs and my responsibility, not blaming everyone else around me. But that takes practice too. It's not going to happen honestly, probably even the first 5 to 7 times. After that, it starts getting a bit more productive for sure.
Absolutely. And I know that's something that for years I'd struggle with. And now I think I've got it down pat with being able to kind of disengage. So at least in terms of my partnership with my husband, disengage when I'm like, okay, this is not going to go the way I want it to go. I mean, of course, I'm not perfect. So sometimes I slip up, but most often I'm like, okay. So sometimes, one of us is in a bad mood, and I recognize, okay, this might not be the time or place to really discuss this particular issue. I'm going to wait till tomorrow when we're both feeling ourselves and all of that. And I think that's worked really well for me, is just kind of knowing, okay, like he's not receptive to this at this point in time. I'm going to wait till tomorrow, and vice versa. And that's been really helpful because like the next day, when we're both time and kind of cooled off, more receptive to like, hey, X, Y, and Z that you said yesterday really bothered me. And I've gotten a positive reaction that way.
Yeah, and I think timing is a key piece, right? You can usually see just by looking at your partner whether this is a good time or not. So the process we go through is, you take that break. Then when the break is over and you come back, we've got person A and person B. So person A simply takes responsibility for their part. I got angry. I got defensive. I said this. I know it's a trigger for you, whatever it might be. Person B then takes their responsibility for their part. What did they do to contribute to cause the kind of conflict that's happening? Then person A just simply listens to try to understand person's B perspective. That's it. Don't have to agree, just listening to try to understand what they're coming from. Then we flip that around and person B is listening to just try and understand person A's perspective of where they're coming from. Once we've done that, then we move on to the final step where we're now looking at, okay, so what do we want to do this? How can we find a balance that kind of works for both of us? Going through that accountability is on yourself. As soon as you start pointing fingers and putting the accountability onto someone else, the chances it's going to go sideways becomes really, really, really high.
Absolutely. And for those who might just feel stuck in their not good enough narrative, are there any words of encouragements or next steps that you might offer?
I think little steps, little bit at a time. First, increase the awareness, then slowly start to challenge that thinking. We live in a society that's very hurry up, quick, 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 quick. Move through things as fast as possible. That's not really how real deep healing works. Time is a big part of it. You need to take time, let things process, understand, sort through things. So I always say, pick one thing you're going to work on and practice it until it feels pretty comfortable. Once it feels really comfortable, then take the next step. But we take big steps, or if we take little steps, we do little step after little, after little, after little, after little, where really we need to take a little step, practice it for a significant period of time, then take another little step, practice it for a significant period of time. That practicing is really important. Our brain is made up of patterns of behaviors, and we need to practice, practice, practice for us to remember and use it again next time and next time and next time. So the more you practice, the more you're building that pathway in your brain to help you remember that when you're in the moment down the road. So practicing and going slow are really, really important pieces.
Absolutely. And if you could give listeners maybe just one takeaway or maybe a mindset shift around self-worth, what would it be?
I mean, I'd like to say you are worthy, but it doesn't really matter what I think. All that matters is what you think. And I think that would be the piece is you are doing this to you. And so the more you challenge and are aware of your own thoughts, the more content you can feel in your life by challenging those thoughts. If you're not happy, it's because of how you are thinking about your life. If you are happy, it is because of how you are thinking about your life. So becoming more aware of how much your self-talk is negative and how much it's positive, and slowly challenging that can be life-changing on the other side of it.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. And for our listeners, and I'm really excited to give your book a read too, if you could tell our audience where they can connect with you, maybe purchase your book and learn more about you and what you do.
Sure. So my book is called Not Good Enough, Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety, and it is available on Amazon. I have a website. It's called trobakholistic.org. On my website, it's got all my social media handles. It's got lots of information about the model of therapy I practice. It has a blog section, which gives you short 2 to 4 minute reads about various pieces of information from this perspective of our core belief. And there's also a page that has other podcast interviews that I've done as well. So it's got a lot of information on there as well. I've also just started a new YouTube page called Sabrina Trobak, which has a lot of little blurbs of information around this as well.
Amazing. I'll definitely be sure to check out your YouTube channel as well because I'm on there quite a bit. But I'll make sure I get all of that down in our show notes. But Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. And I know I've learned a lot, and I know our audience will be excited for this episode as well.
Good. Thank you very much. It was nice chatting with you.
You likewise. Thanks so much.
Take care.